when you're reading to them, they really listen. I would put them on PowerPoint, so I didn't have to do, the teacher thing, where you read and then you show. It was on the PowerPoint so they could see it as I was reading, which was really nice. I do have to tell you, my red-haired grandchild, who is a 2.5, is just finished kindergarten, is going into first grade. So she had grandma camp this summer. I kept her and her sister a week. It's grandma camp. And the sister was in the camp session, kitchen chemistry. The first session was at a different time, so she was just with me. So we were in the room with the whiteboard, because we're in my office, whiteboard and books, and she's reading the book, and I'm working on the computer. She's reading the book, and then she says, Grandma, and she has to show me. She reads some more, Grandma, and she has to show me. And then she goes to the whiteboard, and she says, I'm going to help you send out words. Okay? So she's writing words from the book on the board and telling me how to sound them out. One of the words was bottom, dumb. And she spelled it B-O-D-M. Anyway, that's just an aside. But I do use children's literature in my math lessons, even at the high school level. And so we're going to talk today, after somebody reads this for us, we're going to talk today about squares and square roots. So I need a reader.
Yeah.
Volunteer, Jim? Jenna? Thank you, Miss Laurie.
You're welcome.
Let's say you want to skip that bite before you
My Full Moon is a Square by Eleanor J. At Peter Pond, there are many great features like cottonwoods, cattails, and curious creatures. The bullfrog who finished to learn to read course, and the firefly swarm with its own power source. Paying attention. I like this one. Well, we do. Because of the noise on those fun days in June, the frog read out loud. The flies would sneak down to their favorite limb and hide in the leaves while they listened.
So I would usually stop with my pre-service teachers and say, why do you think they were hiding? And so that they would have some questions for their students.
I thought about that. I was like, no, what do I do?
Why are they hiding?
I would stop it too.
Yes.
How does that relate to food chains? Although they were fond of that frog's friendly face, the swarm stayed a distance from him, just a piece. Their routine was changed in the weirdest of ways when the full moon got lost in a thick, cloudy haze. The bullfrog was squinting and starting to fret, so the flies on the branches were getting upset. No moonlight tonight means no blue kangaroo. Hum, hum, twiddle thumbs, and now there's nothing to do. So the story he would read would be about a blue kangaroo?
Yeah, he was reading about a blue kangaroo. The frog was.
Oh my, where is my moon? The unhappy frog cried as he closed his book firmly and placed it aside. A brave group of flies with their tail lights aglow agreed they should help the poor bullfrog.
It's a tragedy.
The four thoughtful flies, in response to his need, neatly hovered above so the bullfrog could read. Their total of 4 was the smallest of squares. How kind, said the frog to the 2 daring pairs. Thanks for the gesture. I know you mean well, but your 2x2 square is too small, I can tell. He kicked up his flippers and wiggled his toes. Perhaps you'd be willing to add a few rows? The next square inside showed a total of 9. The frog stared a while at the brilliant design. The bottom, the middle, and top each had 3. bigger the square, the number 3 is the key. Good job, said the frog as he picked up his book. It might do the trick, he said. Let's have a look. Too small once again, he said, wrinkling his nose. Could you come a bit closer and add to your rows? The fireflies figured they'd rather add more and lined up above him in 4 rows of 4. Their square, based on 4, added up to 16. That's the prettiest pattern this frog's ever seen. You really are bright, he said, tapping his chin, but not bright enough. And I'd like to begin. Another group swooped in a loop-de-loop dive until 25 lights were lined up 5 by 5. He studied the square that was there on display. Going down or across, I count 5 either way. The bigger the better and much brighter too. Now I'll tell you the tale of that blue king of pooh. The flies in the spotlight were showing no fear, so the rest of the swarm began gathering. Their 10 rows of 10, which had 100 lights, could have lit up the pond on the darkest of nights. Too big and too bright, said the frog. I suppose you should move a bit higher. Oh, sorry. Too big and too bright, said the frog. I suppose you should move a bit higher or drop a few rows. They chose to fly higher, which cut down the glare. The happy frog chuckled. My full moon is square. His square moon grew dimmer the longer he read. Well enough for one sitting, the sleepy frog said. Tomorrow at dusk, if we meet here once more, whether cloudy or not, I can read chapter 4. Their love of a good book had formed a strong bond. That's why there's a square moon at Peekaboo Pond.
So Kim was just saying y'all were very quiet during the reading, so you have to be just that quiet for me, okay?
She's an excellent reader.
She's an excellent reader, very good job. So what do you think about the book? Anyone, but please raise your hand. Yes, ma'am.
I think that there's enough too that you could tie it to later. I mean, it definitely has the plot that we're looking for, so sometimes when we try to do that, you're lacking. You know, like some math books lack
Yeah,
the depth of true, authentic work.
that's true.
And that doesn't. Like, I could easily build that for mentor text for characterization. Did he do what you would expect?
Yeah, the tension, you could feel the tension,
Yes.
and even in the room, as they kept adding more. Come closer, he said. Okay, so I'm gonna tie that into a mathematics activity, all right? So we've been talking about squares. I'm not gonna treat you like boys and girls right now, and children. So we've been talking about squares, so I need to know what numbers are called, why numbers, I can't even read, why some numbers are called perfect square numbers. And I'm gonna call on Isabel. Why do we call some numbers perfect squares? And you can refer back to the book if you want.
The book creates a perfect square when you have the number. I'm thinking of the book,
Yeah.
like a perfect square.
So to have a perfect square from figures like fireflies, it has to have the same number of rows and columns. Yes, we want the kids to say those 2 words, okay? So, tell me the perfect square numbers that are between 0 and 100. Ashley, what? What's the first perfect square square number,
Oh, 2 by 2?
which is? what's-
4.
4.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Actually, 1 is considered a perfect square.
Right.
So 1,
Right, 1,
4,
4,
Ashley.
9,
Mm-hmm.
16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, and 99. No.
Well, I did say between, I didn't say including, so if she didn't say the 100, then she
Oh,
was
yeah.
Yeah. So, how, if we were going to multiply, what numbers would we multiply to get 25? Pam? What numbers?
5 times 5.
5 times 5, so that's why it's called a perfect square, because we multiply the same number by itself. So it's a perfect square. So what's a square root? May not be in the same grade as you were one question ago. That was actually. Brenda, what's a square root?
It's the undoing of a square.
Thank you for saying that exactly right. It is undoing the square. So if I have the perfect square 4, what is the square root of 4?
2.
And how do you know?
Because in order to get 4, you have to have 2 rows and 2 columns.
Good, so you would multiply 2 times 2, and that would give you 4. So I want you to take your 2 color counters, which are over here, and model 4 with the yellow side up. Go ahead and open these and look at them before you begin, in case you're not familiar with them. Thank you.
This is our, I think these are gonna go math.
Oh,
Are we each getting
way
a
to
pen?
go.
Are we each getting one
No.
or?
Just share, I don't care what you do, just make sure you have a.
So the book is that concrete. So it doesn't fit on the,
Well, it's just an engage, so it is actually equal. Okay, so those are called 2 color counters. Renee, can you tell me why they're called 2 color counters?
If I'm not sharing, I don't want to mix it in number.
It has 2 colors,
got all
good.
these back in.
So these are often used to teach integers because the yellow would be positive and the red side would be negative. So they're called 2 color counters. So I want you to model 4 with the yellow side up. Yes, sir.
Model 4, right?
I want you to model the square number 4 with the yellow side up. Thank you, Tim, for keeping me honest.
A lot of my algebra kids have trouble with that because they do the square root of 36 is 6 squared.
Yeah,
And I'm like, no, it's just 6.
yeah,
Well, then they're saying, no, well, 6 times 6 is 36, but yeah, so that,
yeah. They don't get it.
they don't get it.
And square roots undo exponents, or roots, radicals, undo exponents. So we're doing more doing and undoing here. All right. So you've each modeled a perfect square of 4. Does it look like the perfect square in the book where the frog was reading? Yes, it does.
It was more like that.
Oh, is that why you chose yellow? Because of the music?
Ooh.
Let's positive.
She thought of that too.
That would be a good imagination. Okay, so let's roll on. So looking at your square, can you determine the square root of 4? Oh wait, I have to draw. Rochelle.
Yes.
And how do you determine the square root of 4?
We would determine that by counting that there are 2 rows and 2 columns. So since though there are the same number of rows and columns, that number is 2.
Okay, so if we remember when we talked about area? Pretending these are squares now. What would the area of this be, Rochelle?
4,
4. So what are the dimensions? What's the length
2,
and
5,
what's the width?
2.
So So if you wanted to carry it into area, you could. I wouldn't with the circles, I would use colored tiles because they're square. Yes, ma'am.
Would you want to say 4 square units or just 4?
That's a very good question. But should I be saying 4 square units or just 4? 4 square units. Don't you love it when you say, should I be doing this or this? And somebody says yes.
You should get an answer to that.
Thank you, Brandon. That's really up to you. At this point in time, I'm not worried about the units. I'm just worried about the actual numbers, quantities, okay? All right, so is 7 a perfect square?
No.
Hang on, Melissa? 7 a perfect square?
I believe 7 is not a perfect square because no matter how I position my 7 little circles, it will not make a perfect square.
Okay, so she expanded already, because I was gonna ask her how would she know. If I was dealing with really young children, I would say, can you make a square out of 7? And let them play with it, okay? And of course, they cannot. You can't make a square out of 7. So I have an illustration up there for y'all. If I was doing this with children, I would not have that up there already, okay? But I do want you to see, is 7 between 2 perfect square numbers? Yes or no? It's on my tongue today. I can't get off of it. So, Brianna, which 2 perfect square numbers is 7 between? Because Ashley told you all the perfect square numbers.
Yeah, I just said it.
1, 4,
4.
16, 25. Which 2 is 7 between?
16. Or
Pam, would you like to tell her the perfect square numbers again?
The first one is 1, 2 times 2 is 4,
right.
3 times 3 would be 9.
So 9. So 9.
And which ones are, is it between? 9 is bigger than 7.
Right.
What's the perfect square less than 7?
4.
4. So 7 is the, well, I can't talk. 7 is between 4 and 9. So its square root is going to be between 2 and 3. My algebra kids never figured that part out, okay? So, here's a picture of that. There's the 4 square, okay, 4. This is 9. You can see that 7 is between them. Okay, yes ma'am.
Is there a reason why those 3 red?
Yes, there's a reason why those 3 are red. Can you tell me
There's
why?
a reason.
Renee?
Because they don't make the perfect square.
They don't make a square. There's the 4, perfect square 4. These don't make a perfect square, so I put them as red. Not to imply that they're negative, okay? Just that they're there, okay? So, so we know that the square root of 7 is between 2 and 3. We just talked about that. So the square root of 7 is going to be 2 point, and I know I said point, and I shouldn't have, but I don't have numbers back there with place values. So 2 point something, correct? How do we know that? Kim?
Because it's in between. Hold on. Because it's in between the square root of 4, which is 2, and the square root of 9, which is 3.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Okay, so we're gonna figure out the square root of 7 using our counters, okay? We're going to do that. So here is 4, here is 7, and here is 9. How many counters do we need here to complete this square?
2.
We need 2. Okay, now we're not gonna put the 2 there. I wish I had some clear ones to put there, but if you are on paper, would you just draw those 2 there? Okay? You could do this with grid paper also and map colors, so that the grids are there for them. Yes,
I
ma'am?
was just curious, there's a thing that we do, there's a lesson that we do in algebra where we ask, after we do that, we ask them, is it closer to,
Yes, ma'am.
is that where you're going with this? Or, so we don't.
But without.
Yes, ma'am.
So, when you said, well, you could do this with paper, would you do it first here and then have them draw it on the paper?
I would do it first here and have grid paper available. And I would actually use color tiles because they're square
Okay.
and use the inch grid
Okay.
so they can color. Okay, all right, so, where I am now. That would complete the square. Does your drawing look like this, sort of? You've got 2 extra circles right there, okay? Y'all with me?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so if we compare the number of counters that we have in 7, which is there, that are not in 4, how many counters do we have in 7 that are not in the square of 4? 3. What if we compare that number to the number of counters it needs to make a perfect square of 9? How many counters does it need to make a perfect square of 9? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we need 5 counters to make a perfect square of 9, and we have 3. So we have 3 out of 5, right? So could you use your phones and see what decimal that is equal to? Everybody know that?
Nope.
Okay. It is 6/10, correct? 6/10. Now, people, would you use your phones and find the square root of 7? Every phone has a square root function. Use your phone. If you have a Samsung, turn it sideways and it'll kick that scientific data. Okay.
Is that called a graphing calculator?
No.
That's scientific.
Was it B? Was my
I don't know what a graphing
No, literally though. Very stupid.
Okay. Does everybody have an answer on your calculator? Did Alyssa leave this? She's on. Yes. So, Maria, what is the square root of 7 just to the 10th place on your calculator?
I took too long drawing the picture. So square root. I don't even have a square root on my note.
Turn it sideways.
It is sideways.
264,000.
Just to the 10th place.
2 and 6
2 and 6/10. Isn't that what we got here? So this model accurately depicts the square root of a number to the 10th place, not rounding to the 10th, so that's not true. But just to the digit that's in the 10th place. Isn't that fascinating? So fascinating. So, let's try these, okay? So I'm gonna give you 3 to try. No, ma'am. I'm gonna give you 3 to try. These are just reminders of what we did. They're nothing to do with the 3 that you're going to do, okay? So let's remember the process. You're going to be given a number. Here's the first, here's all of them. You're gonna be given a number. You're gonna determine which 2 squares, perfect squares, it's between, okay? You're gonna make that smaller perfect square. And then you're gonna have the red squares, the red tiles, that are the extra numbers. So for 15, what's the perfect square that's smaller than 15?
9.
9. So you have a perfect square of 9. How many more tiles do you need that are red? You only have 15. So 6 red ones, right? 6 red ones. And then you have to figure out that blank one for the other one to make that perfect square, right?
Where does the 6 from? Can you go back to slide
Sure.
and explain it one more time?
Yeah.
Sure, I will, only if you smile just fine. That's perfect. Okay, so here we started. We want the square root of 7. Even though it doesn't say that right there. We have 7. We want the square root of 7. So the perfect square that's smaller than 7 is 4. The perfect square that's greater than 7 is 9. but we only have 7. So we have our perfect square of 4 and 3 more because we have 7. Okay? It's gonna take 2 more to make that 9. Alright? So then you compare the number that you actually have available here to the number that you would need to make that perfect square. So we have 3 out of the 5. 3 out of the 5. Okay? And you convert that to a decimal. And it should give you at least to the 10th place. Alright? So and then you check it. You always have them check it. Yes, sir.
So are we always comparing the square root of the number, the one that's right above it?
Yes. The one that's between, the one below and above.
I got it.
Okay. What, Brandon?
So below it is 4 and above it is 9?
Yes. Or 7.
Oh,
Yes.
so we subtract 4 and 9 and get 5?
No. Well, you could actually, but the 5 is illustrated right here when you complete that 9 square.
Oh, how many is it?
Right. So to go from there.
This is the 9 is one above the 7.
Yes.
The square above that's what we're comparing it to.
Sort of, yeah. But these numbers, you started, but those numbers came from the red one.
Right. So where did
Alright.
3 and 9
Let me have your attention again, I got kind of sidetracked. So you are each doing, I don't want one person to do one person do the other, one person do the other. You're all going to do all 3 of these numbers with the tiles first. Write your answer down to the 10th place, don't round, just whatever digits in the 10th place. And then check it with your phone. Jen?
No rounding at all?
No rounding at all.
Okay.
So I got 6%.
Yes, you're correct. But from
What number do you have?
Get your stick.
How many do you need altogether to make this?
To make this
No, to make the one.
How many more?
How many are not part of it?
Okay, that's the question I was thinking. Thank you. Like I need to. To complete the next.
Okay, cause it's that corner, you gotta have the whole corner, right?
This was, I just had no idea why. Right,
Yeah.
or the clear.
So this should be like this. Or, you know what, I just think, like, everybody has a square root of. Dry erase markers from school supply list, and we wrote them apart. No, we had just the Formica. Yes. Wow, you can use really cheap hairspray.
Didn't know that.
Okay.
Can I use expensive hairspray?
No, because I don't. It really doesn't. Yeah, and if you want to get eco to say. I think it is, but it has to be cheap. Or it doesn't take it out.
I always heard everybody use
Use the cheapest.
Water and alcohol, I don't know. My friend and I were walking down the road.
that's whatever sticky stuff is.
So, like it's for science.
I'm an experiment.
Oh, yeah.
You've done science and you know.
And a widow.
Okay.
701. How do you do the next part? Okay, so this is your 13th. Okay. So you know it's going to be between 9 and the square root. Okay. So it's 3, because you got your 3 by 3 here. Okay, and then it's 4. 4. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Over 7. Over 7. Okay, that's okay. So that's the number. Well, now this you divide by, but you don't round. So you divide what, 6 by side by side, so that should give you the decimal. Now, but don't round, because if you do, it's a failure, so everything will be tracked.
All of it.
And